also a forum. You guys ever heard of this? You've seen that before? Yeah, I mean, you just stumbled across it. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And a lot of the people on the boards were at these was at this convention, and so I ended up going. You know, usually it was in tandem with graduation, but this particular year it wasn't. And I went to Philadelphia where they were doing a show at Temple University. The East Coast Black Age of Commons Convention was inspired by this man, Tertel Only, who in the early 90s, basically he was a distributor. He pretty much would take any kind of like black comics that were jumping off, and he would put them in his car and he would drive all over the country and deliver them to different places. You know, so he was like a one-man distributor. He also made his own comics too, like Nah, that's Nubian of Greatness. You know, he had this character called Sister Girl, like Black Wonder Woman. That's the only, you know, not to color up Wonder Woman, but that's pretty much what she was to a certain degree. Malcolm X, you know, who was basically created from different genetics, from different really powerful black leaders in the one body, 10 people, that kind of thing. And so a lot of it was about uplifting of the black race and thinking about these ideas around Afrocentricity and Afrofuturism. And you'll see these, and actually kind of psychedelic to a certain degree too. I love this style. But he's an extremely important figure in this, if you want to call it the Black Age of Comics. And what he called the Black Age of Comics came from this terminology that you would use in like mainstream comics. So you had like the Golden Age of comics, which is like, you know, the 30s to like around, is that like the 50s or so, like post, you know, Second World War, where everybody was reading comics and people were, and there wasn't any television, and you know, kids were like going to the and it was like a dime to buy them, and there were millions and millions of them being sold. There's also like the Silver Age, which is like post Second World War. There's the Bronze Age, and there's also like one of the there's actually like the Marble Age too, the Marble Age and the Bronze Age. So all these different ages were happening with the comics, and so he's like, what about the Black Age? What's the Black Age? You know, where are these images that are positive of people that look like me? You know, and so he started to like see those things around and try to like put them together and distribute them, right? And so at this thing, the East Coast Black Age of Comics Convention, this gentleman named Yumi Odom, who worked at the African American Studies program there, started doing this convention where he was inviting, you know, black artists to talk about their work, you know. And again, it wasn't, and again, of course, you know, if you put the word black on things, you know, a lot of times people think it's just for black people, you know, but this idea of blackness is a very subjective terminology to a certain degree too. When we're thinking about inclusiveness, we just want to be seen, you know, this idea of the invisibility of the black body and also the hyper-visibility simultaneously is something that they're dealing with, you know, in the work. Anyway. So at the same time, you had people like Dawood Relays, who was doing Brother Man in the early 90s. But you also had Milestone Media, which jumped off that Dwayne McDuffie was a part of, which was basically an imprint from DC Comics. And basically the idea was that they would take these artists of color, these black artists primarily, people like Dennis Cowan, who works with BET now, Mike Davis, let's see, and Diggle. Anyway, sorry. And so basically the idea was that they would put out these black comics, but put out these multicultural comics and show a diverse array of people. Basically, they would show what America looks like in the comics medium, right? And they made a distribution deal with DC Comics. Now, this is around a time when there was like this boom in comics. People, they call it the speculators market, right? So everybody thought that they could put their kids through college by, you know, buying these comics and stuff because people were selling action, you know, action comics #1 for like $50,000 and stuff like that. And so what happened was, you know, all of the really greedy mainstream comics people, they started putting out all these like platinum #1s and stuff like that, and they saturated the market and almost destroyed the comics industry. But at the same time, because of that boom, you had all these small startup companies like Vertigo was starting up, which is like DC Comics, like mature readers or like, you know, fantasy or more literate comics, like stuff like the Sandman and Hellblazer. But you also had stuff like Valiant Comics, Milestone. People were taking chances with comics again, right? It was kind of like a resurgence of the medium, but then the bottom fell out and nobody wanted to invest in anything and it's over. So and so basically, but they still had these great characters though. Actually, Static up there, they changed him to Static Shock. He got his own TV show, and now he actually has another comic book, but we'll talk about that in a second. Brother Man, Dawood Relay, who is one of the Sims brothers. His name is David Sims. His name is Mama Gable. You know, sorry, it is. the Sims brothers. They were working on this comic called Brother Man, and they basically will go to these comic book conventions. They go to like these kind of like African art fairs and stuff, and they by hand sold 750,000 copies of this thing. It's the longest running kind of like black comic that's independent in history. You know, it's about 11 issues of that thing. And now Dawood works at Cartoon Network. He's an Emmy Award-winning animator. And now they're working on a new Brother Man graphic novel, and there's a chance of some other ancillary products coming from Brother Man. So it's a really inspiring book because people who are doing this type of work, he basically proved that it could be done. I mean, the style of it is very much in the style of like Mad Magazine and like satirizing stuff. He actually was doing they were doing like an airbrushing business, and they were using the comic to promote the business, and the comic took off. Okay. He said a lot of times he would actually like be drawing the book in the back of like vans when they were driving around the country. I mean, I told him, and I'm telling you, Dawood, he should do a book about the creation of black comics. It was a family affair, and this is the kind of stuff that was going on. This is the kind of stuff that was going on. So ECBAC, I went to ECBAC. It's the East Coast Black Asian Comics Convention, and they just did their like 10th one in a decade. Tertel Ali was doing the Black Asian Comics Convention at Kenwood Academy, where he still teaches, and it's in Chicago. This is the largest collection of like people who are doing this type of work, and it's really cool. It's like a family reunion or something, right? Because it's so connected to the Black Superhero portal. You know, people would actually know who you are before, when they see you or they look at your work and stuff like that. I didn't use like a code name, so I'm like just John Jennings, on the forums. And so, I would introduce myself, like, oh my God, yeah, how you doing? It was like, and it didn't have any designations according to like celebrities, as opposed to like people who were just like made something in Kinko's, And so you hang out with like, whatever artist they had there, and it's really cool, and it's more like a family affair, And the thing about it is that it's this flashpoint for the subculture of African American cartoonists, And it was amazing. And again, it's in Philly, and it's every year in March. Something else that started happening too was the Glyph Awards, right? This gentleman named Rich Watson. He is a very talented writer and comics enthusiast, and he used to do this column on it was Pop Culture Shock for a long time called the Glyphs, right? And basically, he was focusing on African American images and by anybody actually. Didn't even matter, and it doesn't really matter actually. But just looking at this particular culture through the medium of comics, and he was great. So he actually created this idea called the Glyph Awards, which is kind of like the Image Awards of comics. So basically, people who are working with the African American image in comics, and it's given out at the ECBAC kind of proceedings. So it's the night before. So usually you fly in, you go to the awards, and the next day it's con. And people just, compete and, they have fun, and it's a great experience. I've won, I won two so far. One for The Whole, my first graphic novel, and they actually created an award for the Black Comics piece, so that was really exciting. I think it's called the Chairman's Award, so that's pretty awesome. This is the portal for blacksuperhero.com. So when you go there, you can see this is basically like the landing page, and then there's like a forum where there's lots of heated debates going on in Heroes, called Hero Talk. And they actually have like competitions every month, and they have sections about like marketing and about like the future of printing and publication. It's a really interesting dialogue about things. Something else that's actually interesting too is like back in the 90s when Milestone was jumping off, there was this other company called Ania. And Ania actually is very, very much more, I guess you would say like Afrocentric to a certain degree. They accused Milestone of being, of whitewashing, blackwashing white superheroes, and there was this kind of fight that was going on too. So sometimes you have this kind of polarizing identity crisis between, what is supposed to be the right way to show blackness, like what is the way that we're supposed to act, and how is blackness supposed to be portrayed in comics, and what does it mean to portray comics that aren't supposedly in that box? It's really kind of interesting discussion that was going on between them. This actually just happened at the Tubman Museum. The reason why I put this in here is because there's a